Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. Well, we're just going to be a Star Trek podcast. I make that mistake every so often, so bear with me. I am one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Star Trek Voyager Season 1, Episode 8, Emanations. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek podcast.
There you go. David said it right. You know what I meant, but there you go. Yes, we will be talking about Star Trek Voyager's episode Emanations, but in addition to that, we will also be talking about the fact that today is First Contact Day and what that means in regards to Star Trek. Now, of course, I'm sure that all of you hardcore Trek nerds know exactly what First Contact Day is, but since we actually have some, legit on-screen canon about it, why not talk about it? Something that we've gone over before, of course, but it's always fun to get to celebrate these little anniversaries in real time here. And since today is the day, why not?
Right.
Now, before we dive into everything, of course, I'd like to give ourselves a little recap of our week, since a lot of times this is the first time that David and I have gotten a chance to see and speak to one another. So, David, how has your week been?
Week's been good. Let's see. I've been watching the show One Piece on Netflix. I think I mentioned it last week. Have you seen it?
I'm watching it. I'm watching it myself.
It's really good. It's
yeah.
Amazing. I just finished season 1. I only started season 2. I'm only one episode on season 2. How far are you?
Oh, I'm much further.
Okay.
So you're watching it on, you said Hulu?
Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mean the actual anime, not the live action?
No, I'm talking live action. The anime looks interesting well enough. The anime. So Netflix has the live action version, but they also have the anime on it, and the anime has like
a crazy number of episodes. Yeah,
it's crazy. I am curious to take a look at it. I'm not a huge anime fan myself. I'm just not into that style. Some people really love it. It's not my style, but the live action version is amazing. The storytelling is so good. I mean, obviously they have something to base it off of, and it's been successful for a very long time, since the 90s. The characterization is so clear. The visualization is so clear. Like, every character is visually distinct. But more important than all of that, the villains are awesome. They're likable villains. Now, there is one villain in season 1 who's like the villain, and he's not likable in the sense of he's the villain, kind of. There's minor villains, but the one villain that you think is going to be the big bad, turns out he's way more awesome than that. The visualization is clear. Each character is just so visually distinct. Obviously it's anime transferred to live action, but the characters are all great. They're all unique. The storytelling was just fantastic in season 1, and I heard it was great, so I was like, all right, I'll give it a go, even though it's an anime-inspired show, and really enjoyed it. So that's what I've been watching. Finished up book 4 of the Pendragon cycle. Book 4 is really interesting, because book 3, as I mentioned last week, has this huge cliffhanger, and book 4 is we're going to go back in time and talk about stuff that happened in between book 3 that wasn't mentioned in book 3. So you're like, okay, great. Let's do it. And again, it wasn't bad. It was just curious that book 3, book 4 is very much it opens with we know that book 3 had a cliffhanger ending, but we're going to go back and tell stories from in between parts of book 3. I'm like, okay, great. Can we get the cliffhanger ending solved? But that eventually, I guess. So finished up that. I started reading Flags of Our Fathers, which is the book about the raising of the United States flag on Iwo Jima. It's the one of the 6 guys lifting up the American flag. It's the story of the book is the story of the 6 guys who raised the flag. And it's a very poignant book. There's also movie, a Clint Eastwood movie on it, so I plan on watching that at some point. Other than that, work this week was very good. It was funny. My coworker asked if I'd switch days with him, and like I was definitely interested because the shift that he wanted to trade sounded like a better shift, and it turned
Hmm.
out to be like the best shift I've had so far. Being back at Mattress Firm,
Okay.
it's hilarious. I was like, I'm so glad I switched. Other than that, today's also Easter for all those who celebrate Easter. So had Easter services today. I was with my folks this evening, and we played a game called Wingspan for fun. It's a very fun little board game. It's very popular. The idea is you're collecting birds in an aviary, um, and it's a very beautifully drawn uh, board game. Every bird is hand drawn, and there's a little blurb about the bird, but it's a very fun little game. My niece just turned 5 this week. She had her birthday, so we'll be celebrating. We're gonna get together on Wednesday for the family to celebrate that with her. But she has her own little birthday party next week. So anyway, busy time for me at this moment, but yeah, things are good. So what's up with you?
Nice. Well, yeah, I'm not as busy, but still busy in its own right. I've been doing, still keeping up with the workouts and things like that. That's been going pretty well. I seem to have hit my stride a bit on that stuff. So really enjoying the fact that I can just be a bit more consistent with things. Consistency is always going to be the biggest issue for anybody who is really trying to you know train and make progress and make gains, as they say, and so forth. You're definitely going to have to be a bit more consistent with things. So I'm glad that like my routine is starting to level out so I could be a bit more stable and consistent on things.
Mhm.
So there's that. We just finished up our whole round of family birthdays from February through March. I'm so glad that's over. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's nice to see family and celebrate and everything else, but man, is it a hassle. My nephew's birthday actually finishes us out because his is the last birthday, but it's in April, so we're done for the foreseeable future for a while.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we didn't get to do much in the regards of celebrating his birthday because he has mono, so he's
Oh,
basically on lockdown from everything
oh
while
yeah,
he
mono can be bad.
recovers. Yeah, it can be very bad, and he's trying to in typical teenager fashion, very much believing that one moment he's fine, the next minute he's down for the count,
Yeah,
and all of that just really kind of has made things difficult. But I think they're finally getting it that he needs to just sit down and work his way through it. um, I'm still slowly making my way through that book and the Children of Blood and Bone, I think it was called. I don't know why I've forgotten the title, but whatever. My other focus has been learning certain coding languages as well.
uh-huh.
Picked up this book recently, how to code for Python. So just kind of making my way through that. And yes, today is also Easter. We didn't get to really do a whole big family thing because, again, my nephew has mono, so we just kept it really small. Made a bunch of food, ate a bunch of food, slept because I ate too much food,
Hmm.
you know, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then there was one other. Oh, you talked about One Piece. I have been watching it, but I've been watching the anime version, not the live
Live action.
action one.
Okay.
And it is a lot. I mean, it's a lot. And they've got it broken up into not even, I mean, obviously it's seasons, but it's like the seasons don't make sense if you're looking for them to be like standardized. If you're saying, oh, each season is 24 episodes, for example. Not
Hmm.
the case. It's like
Nope.
some sections are 20, some are 200. And then there's
Yeah.
another one that's like 13. And
Yeah.
then here's one that's 90.
Right.
So it's all just about whatever story it is they're trying to tell at the time. And it is one of the longest running, if not the longest running, animes that are out there.
Yeah.
I don't know when it started. I never looked it up, but it's knew that it had been running for a very long time. Um, I'm in the Marineford storyline.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure how that would equate. Well, I know that's much further in from where you are, but anybody else who may be familiar with One Piece, you can tell me if I'm still in the early stages, if I'm in the middle, whatever. I know there's a lot of it. I currently have a subscription to a site called Crunchyroll, which has a lot of anime shows on it, and that's where I watch it at. In addition to some other animes as well. I've just been trying to make my way through certain shows that I guess are a bit more popular. They kind of make their rounds on like YouTube and TikTok and things like that, get mentioned for things. So I've been there watching a lot of these things to kind of just figure out what's what. Overall, I really do enjoy One Piece. I like what you said is very true. The villains are just so over the top, wonderful, kind of love to hate. As I've made my way through the series, I've found there's a lot of them that they start off initially when we're introduced to them as very evil, but then somewhere along the way, the story will relate back to them and give an explanation for why they are the way they are, and so it's just like, oh, like we didn't know this until later. And and so I like that they don't totally give up on a character. Like even though the character may have been defeated 3 sections ago or whatever, something about the story will at least give us a little bit more context as to why they were doing what they were doing. And so even though they were still the villain, you can at least kind of be like, I understand why they did what they did.
Right.
But your core characters, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, those guys, they're great.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed watching them, and they each develop in different ways. And that's one thing I really appreciate about the show too, is they've been very distinct on how each character has something different to contribute to the crew, and not just with like a skill set, but also personality wise. So that's been very fun to watch as well. My new favorite character is I know he appears later than where I am in the story. I've been waiting for him. Is Brook. So waiting for Brook to make his appearance, because he's the one that like I'd seen in some of these clips and stuff. And so I was looking for where he comes into the storyline. So we'll get there, I'm sure.
Okay.
But we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about Star Trek, all things Trek, including Emanations. And we're going to get to Emanations, but I feel it's important to stop and talk about First Contact Day, because it's something that, I like how it's a holiday unto itself for the Trek fandom, and it's not like it's going to be officially recognized for anything, obviously, but it's something that we just kind of like, have as our own, something that we do, right?
Right.
And so, as we have already watched the movie Star Trek First Contact, there's no reason to rehash that movie, of course. But as we all know, First Contact Day is the day that Vulcans will supposedly make first contact with humans and begin the era of human utopia, as it becomes later known. There's a lot of stuff that they do online for it. If you play Star Trek Online at all, there's always a little series of events that they do where you can win little in-game prizes and stuff behind the game. You get to play through their version of events for the landing at Bozeman, which is where the Vulcans are supposed to make first contact. There's a brief reference to it in Star Trek Picard as well. So I like that they've kind of kept that as a part of the core story of Trek and continue to develop things out of that. It's just, I don't know. I know that it hasn't happened. And, obviously we don't know what's going to be going on in what's that? This is 2026. That's supposed to be in 2063. So we're looking at about 40 something years, really, give or take.
Right.
We don't know what anything's going to be. I used to love to fantasize about, like what would happen if, and where I'll be and everything else. But I mean, if I make it, I'll just be an old man, that's all there is to that. So I'll be the old man who's crazy in the wandering the streets. Where are the Vulcans? Where are the Vulcans? So, but yeah, I mean, as a newer fan to and gaining this knowledge of First Contact Day, did you see anything online, or was it just me telling you today was First Contact Day?
I mean, I wasn't online enough today to have noticed anyone saying anything about it. I'll also say that I don't, when I'm online, I'm not. Well, I'll say this. On YouTube, I do get clips of like TNG and Deep Space Nine sometimes, and now Voyager, which I have to skip past because I'm like, I don't want to ruin stuff for myself. But I wasn't online today, so nothing came up directly. So yeah, you mentioning it was my knowing that it was out there. Yeah, the movie First Contact, I mean, the whole plot of that one is that the Borg send a new cube, and Picard and crew are fighting it with some other ships, but when it gets toward Earth, something happens and it goes back in time. It jumps back.
Yeah, the Borg show up at Earth. They blow up a bunch of ships, but the Enterprise is able to show up and blow up the cube.
Right.
The cube ejects the sphere, which then emits chronotons, which allows them to travel to Earth's distant past, where they try to destroy and assimilate Earth in the past before they make first contact.
Correct.
And the Enterprise crew follows them back and stops them from doing that.
Yeah, and Picard and some of the crew stay on the Enterprise and stop the Borg taking over the ship. Meanwhile, Riker and Geordi
and Deanna, Riker, Geordi, Deanna, Beverly.
They're on Earth helping make sure that first contact goes smoothly.
Right.
Goes according to plan.
They meet Zefram Cochrane, the guy who invented warp drive, and Geordi and Riker end up helping him. They're co-pilots in his ship launch.
Right.
And while Picard is on the ship with Worf and Data,
right,
fighting the Borg with Lily Sloan.
Right. I'll say this about the movie. The plot is very Terminator-esque in the sense of going back in time to stop an important event from happening in order for the villains to win somehow. I'm not saying that you can't have a similar plot that just because Terminator did it so well that you can't ever make that plot again. I'm just
that's an interesting take because I never thought that. But mainly because Star Trek does so much time jumpy stuff. It never occurred to me to see the parallel between it and Terminator, but it absolutely is.
I'll say this. I think Terminator is lucky in that sort of plot is so obvious in terms of what time travel would supposedly suggest is possible that plot line was inevitable to happen, and it's just Terminator that
it's kind of basic. Yeah, it's actually very basic. 100%. Jump back in time to kill the influential individual who's messing up your
killing Hitler is just the good version of the Terminator story.
Yeah, that's what we would hope that it would. Yeah,
kill Hitler before he got evil or something. I mean, anyway, my point is that I remember watching the movie and I couldn't articulate my problem with it at the time, but now that I can think back on it, I would say that the plot of going back and experiencing first contact and trying to make sure it happens is interesting, but basically that movie is two plots happening simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And I think both plots would have been serviced better if they had been their own stories. The Borg plot is already unique and interesting. In fact, it's the most aggressive version of the Borg we've ever seen, mm-hmm. In terms of how quickly they assimilate people into their hive. You get touched by one of them and you're like 10 seconds later you're a Borg minion immediately. It's all right, go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with you on their aggressive stance, and it's one of the things that we will be talking about in greater detail because mild spoiler, Janeway and crew runs into the Borg. Yeah. And I mean, you already knew that because you knew that 7 of 9 was a part of the crew, so you know they're coming. But that is something that we will touch later, so I don't want to get too much into the Borg here. But you're right; they are very aggressive in this movie. They're very not just focused on their mission of assimilating Earth in the past, but also very intent on stopping Jean-Luc Picard and the conversion of Data in the movie. So, and it's just things like that we had never seen them do before.
Right.
So. Yeah, and I remember when this movie came out, it's one of the first um, Trek films that I ever saw in the theater, and it was amazing. Like I just remember being, it was so loud, and we get the Picard scream and all that stuff on screen, and it was great. Just an absolutely great, kind of a thriller movie.
Yeah.
That honestly, I don't know that they could. Um, I don't know if they could do that again. Like I've seen the other Trek movies, the big screen, whatever's, and I'm just gonna like for me, all of the new Trek movies, they all suck because they all well, and I say that because they all do the same thing over and over again, which is that it's the retelling of these various origin stories that we don't need. If
Yeah.
they would just do like what they were doing then when they made First Contact and so forth, which was the continuation of a storyline, those would hold more appeal, at least to me. It's
Sure.
like the Superman and the Batman issue. We know their origin story. We know what's happened to them. I don't need you to rehash it. And I've always, even though I went and saw the movies, I've always thought it was a huge mistake that when they decided to launch Star Trek again on the big screen, that they went to once again origin stories of the crew.
Right.
And they kind of got away with it because it was a slightly altered universe, and these guys were the characters were from the show in the 60s, so it was kind of like one of those everything old is new again type things. But once again, you are playing to a fan base that has already consumed all that material, and even though we may not be the original fans, like I wasn't alive when the show in the 60s was on, but as a fan, I've gone back and I've watched it. When you're doing these movies now, it's people like me and maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit older, that you're really aiming towards to get to watch it. Well, we want to see new, we want to see exciting, we want to see that kind of contemporary stuff.
Hmm.
I don't need to see or I don't want to see some, 20 something hopping through the whatever in a Starfleet uniform. Don't care.
Right.
So, and I think that's why we're running into the issue of these types of movies not getting made quite so much, and also why the shows don't last either, because it's not you want all the nostalgia, but then you don't pay respect to the people that the nostalgia would work the most for. So that's just kind of a weird way to do things. But
Yeah.
anyway,
There's also
Star
something
Trek was
else.
great. Go
There's
ahead.
one other thing I think why the new Star Trek shows are maybe not working like the old ones, like TNG and the others. I want to say this very clearly. This is Star Trek, because it's a show, TV show. It doesn't have the budget of like a Star Wars. It's not. I mean, it has there are movies obviously, but it was originally a TV show, so it had smaller budgets. It was dealing with faster turnaround times in terms of plots for episodes and such. So Star Trek, in comparison to something like Star Wars, is almost a B story. Not in terms of like the quality of the storylines and some of the it was more campy. That's the word I'm looking for. There's a kind of campiness to Star Trek that makes it endearing. And modern Star Trek, instead of keeping it in that sort of campy zone, which was what was so lovable about it, it took it into the professional realm. It turned it into a high octane, action packed,
Mhm.
less cerebral storyline, and it's more about flashy colors and really nice sets and blah 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 blah. What makes Star Trek so much fun with like TNG and Deep Space Nine and Voyager is that these characters we're with them all the time. They have these long seasons. We're seeing all kinds of seeing them all over the place in multiple various scenarios. There's a bit of campiness to some of the prosthetics, and the plots are a little bit clunky at times, but there's a heart to the classic Star Trek shows that is missed when you professionalize everything and you
Yeah.
streamline it all.
And the
That
yeah,
makes
and
sense. Do
the
you agree to
yeah,
that?
the you shorten the overall body of work so that those awkward, clunky moments become highlighted,
Right.
and you don't have enough in between them to make you forget them a little bit to see the pearls that you actually put out there. Star Trek was always at its best when it focused on the story. Those campy aspects that you talk about are often were often due to budget limitations. You know, there were just certain things they couldn't do because they couldn't afford it on the
Uh-huh.
show. Now you've got episodes that are running them, you know, a couple of million per episode. Seasons that are costing, you know, twice or even three times budgets for major motion pictures, even, and you're getting far less product, and more you're seeing people are kind of pushing back and trying to, you know, figure out what the issue is and why these new shows aren't working and everything else, but everybody's dancing around the same issue, and it's just that you don't have the same level of development.
Right.
You like you said, they feel like they've streamlined the process so that they can throw the majority of the budget into gadgets and special effects and things like that. And don't get me wrong, certain aspects of that are appreciated. Anything that helps with your world building and your world immersion in particular are always going to be great and are going to shine through. But when that suddenly starts to make you have to sacrifice um, good storytelling, good story development, acting, just the ability for the actors themselves to give you a more lived in and realistic experience,
Uh-huh.
then you're gonna have issues. I think that's the biggest issue with Star Trek Discovery is that every single episode was this hard hitting, deeply emotional, very, you know, just it had to, you had to get to this certain point because the next episode required that it be at a certain point so they could tell that story. There were no fillers, there was no cast off moments, no bottle episodes
Mhm.
where people just got to like explore other talents or you know, connections or anything like that. Everything had to be precise because they didn't have the time to spend on all the other kind of stuff because the story needed to be told a certain way. And
Right.
so when you're watching, especially now with the way that things are accessed via streaming and everything else, when you get that kind of episodic television back to back to back, your characters, they lose all sense of realism because your character in one scene is laughing and then 2 minutes later is overwrought and crying and just seems utterly defeated, and then
Right.
by the end of the episode they're back chill again and they're confident in their mission and ready to move forward despite the utter devastation they just experienced 15 minutes ago. The sense of time is completely lost. It's treated as an irrelevant factor to their storytelling, which is what humans use as a way to ground them in a story. When
Right.
you tell us that a person has been stranded, isolated, or otherwise cut off for months, but for us, it was a 30-second montage. Can't connect.
Right.
Can't connect. You know, at least in the old days, they gave us a two-parter for stuff like that. You know, at the
We
very
hope you
least,
did.
you know, right? You know, but yeah, it's just like things like that are totally lost when you have this kind of to use a, you know, like another term, this kind of corporate structure of we need to get it done by the end of this quarter so we can
Mhm.
be ready for the next quarter
Mhm.
is crazy
Yeah.
for storytelling, and that's why it that's I think that's why Star Trek is starting to um, slip, starting to fail, and this most recent show, Strange New Worlds, I'm sorry, Starfleet
Starfleet Academy.
Academy.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if this is true or not. I heard this reported. Some people who worked on the show and whatever else reported that in the entirety of its run so far, they've only had 400,000 original views of the entire show. So, and I mean, there's a whole season two that hasn't even come out yet. So you've only got 10 episodes. So out of 10 episodes, you've got a total of 400,000 views. That's terrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible. And I know there are some people who really enjoy the show, think that what they're doing is, edgy, groundbreaking, cool, whatever. But to me, if that's true, if you only got 400,000, that clearly tells me you're missing out on your major fan base. You're missing the point. You're not going to draw them in doing whatever it is that you're doing. So, you know, but okay, we are going to switch it up, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Voyager Emanations. Now, I know that you gave the recap last week. I'm going to give this one.
Go ahead.
Just so that we can, get to it here. What
Yeah.
does he say? Real quick, what is he saying? We had a bit here going on in the chat room. I just want to see what that was about. Yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Odo and Kira, again, felt earned because we watched them lay out the foundations of their friendship and eventual relationship over 6 seasons. That is correct. So you may not agree with Odo and Kira being together. Some people didn't like it, whatever. But the fact is, we did get to see their relationship progress into something more. And it makes sense. Now to Emanations. This is the 8th or 9th episode of the first season. This episode starts with the crew discovering a new element as they're investigating this area of the Delta Quadrant in deep space. They're trying to figure out what the element can be used for. B'Elanna's got a lot of different ideas. Harry's got some ideas. They're all just very excited. And they decide to get a sample, but then B'Elanna has the great idea of, no, let's not do a sample. Let's beam down to one of these random asteroids and see the element in its natural environment. Chakotay, of course, as first officer, is put in charge of the away team. He selects B'Elanna. He has asked Harry to come with him. Harry, again, being our young ensign here, this is kind of like gain knowledge for the sake of knowledge type thing. Mm-hmm. They beam down to one of the asteroids. They are walking through various caverns. There's webbing everywhere. And finally, I believe it's B'Elanna, walks into a body. Like she turns a corner.
Yep.
There's a dead body there, It's all wrapped up, mummified, whatever. And they continue to look, and they find a cavern, which is just, there's bodies everywhere, all wrapped up the same, some in various states of decay. They call back to the ship. They tell them what they found. And basically it's determined that this must be some kind of burial site for these people.
Right.
Harry wants to proceed with the mission, but Chakotay is like, well, this is clearly, again, sacred space to somebody. Let's not do anything to disturb it. So I recommend that we don't use tricorders, which to me doesn't make any sense. We'll get to that. Just a visual assessment of the area. He begins his, Torres begins hers, Kim begins his. They basically come to the conclusion that, yeah, it's a burial site. There's a little bit of inference that can be made about the ritualistic practices of the people, but again, nothing major, nothing necessarily groundbreaking beyond this is where people are put when they die. All of a sudden, there's a weird energy reading, and I think they call it a subspace vacuole opens up. And Chakotay tries to do an emergency beam out, and it's partially successful. He and B'Elanna return to the ship, but Harry is not with them. Instead, one of these recently deceased aliens is with them.
Right.
B'Elanna scans the body, realizes that the person has just recently died. There's still brain activity, possibility of them reviving said individual. But Chakotay doesn't want to do it because he doesn't want to disturb the death rituals of these people. But B'Elanna makes a good point, which is basically, we need answers about what happened to Harry, so we got to wake this chick up.
Right.
So they take her to sickbay. Meanwhile, Kim appears, and he's surrounded by these aliens inside what looks like a giant egg. Whatever, we'll get to that thing too. He's pounding on it. They open it up. Harry's in there, and they're like, where's the person that we just, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So now these aliens are all very excited because for the first time ever in doing this death process that they've been going through, someone has actually returned from the other side. Now, granted, he doesn't look anything like them. He's not dressed like them. None of that seems to have thrown them off at all. They're just very excited as to what Harry means for their religious process.
Right.
Harry can't tell them anything. There's no afterlife or whatever. He makes a couple of statements about some dead bodies in the caves, which some people overhear and become deeply distraught about. And
Right.
the head of the Thanatopsis Society, I think is what it was called, the head priest guy is basically like, hey, shut up. Like, just start talking.
Yeah.
Let's figure this out for a second. Meanwhile, back on the ship, they take the body again to sickbay. The doctor is able to revive the individual, who promptly freaks out because, of course, when you thought you were going to die and you wake up surrounded by a bunch of aliens, who wouldn't freak out? They get her to calm down. She's asking about, where's her brother? Where's her family? Where's all these people she was expecting to see in this next life? And they're like, yeah, can't help you. Sorry.
Right.
And again, continues to freak out. Janeway's trying to get her to tell her some information about their ritual and process or whatever else, but the chick is just not helpful. She doesn't know anything, which, it makes sense. Like, how much do you know about your afterlife, right? I mean, we have theories, we have guesses, but there's never been someone who's definitively come back and said, yeah, here it is, right? Well, you know what I mean. So anyway,
I'll just say it right now. It's funny that this episode we're watching, it takes Easter. It was in my head the whole time I was watching it. But anyway. Go ahead.
So again, back on the planet, Harry is basically undergoing all kinds of analysis, trying to figure out what the heck is going on with him. While this is happening, he makes contact with another alien who is apparently close to death. He finds out a little bit about the society and that when people reach a certain level of either age, illness, or just overall not able to really sustain or support themselves, their family members sign them up for this process. And as a way to kind of release this burden and move on to what they call the next emanation, you go through this process and you sit in that giant egg machine, which effectively kills you. And then your body is transported to that next emanation. That's the subspace vacuole. Right. Harry's able to put some of this together and realizes that he needs to go back and that that thing may be the only way for him to do so. But again, the head priest is like, yeah, no, we're going to keep you here and we're going to basically use you in a series of experiments and some other stuff because we need people to kind of like believe in this. The other guy is like, look, I don't want to go through this anymore. I'm having second thoughts.
Yeah.
I've got questions. And now that I think about it, I'm really just not ready to give up my life yet, but I'm kind of stuck because this is very important to my family and I don't want to disappoint them, nor do I want to hurt them with what's going on.
Right.
So he and Harry have to plan, which is basically Harry is going to take his place. The guy reveals that he's got some friends who didn't go through the ceremony when they were supposed to have gone through the ceremony, and they all just kind of chucked off to the mountains somewhere, and they all live in this remote mountain pass, which I had the brief thought of, if you know it, doesn't the rest of your society know that there are these people who should be dead living in your mountains and no one's doing anything about them? But whatever. He's like, I'll escape to the mountains. I'll go up there. I'll live out my days and I'll just die when I'm really supposed to die. Right. And you can take my spot. So he teaches Harry how to do the wrappings. He sneaks out to the mountains. They come and get the body. They put him in the machine. They're getting ready to do the whole thing. And here's the crazy part. Like, in order for it to work, the machine kills you. So Harry is gambling that even with the machine killing him, he'll be sent through with enough time that the doctor will be able to revive him.
Yeah.
So I just, That's a huge leap of faith, in my opinion. I don't know that I would be able to do that. I don't live in that universe with that kind of medical technology, but whatever. Harry signs up for it, and yeah, they put him back in. He's killed. He's sent through the subspace vacuole. They do the crew does find him, and they're able to revive him. Oh, and by the way, the other side plot. Voyager is in this asteroid field, and because they're in the asteroid field, when the aliens on the planet start using their Thanataph machine, bodies start appearing on Voyager.
Yeah.
So then they're having that problem of random dead aliens showing up on their ship, and then having to beam them back down to wherever. But it's causing problems for the ship. So it's like, we got to get out of this asteroid field so that this stops happening. But if they get out of the asteroid field, they run the risk of not being able to find Harry should he ever come back.
Right.
The alien chick that they, woke up, basically they allowed to die and send her back to the asteroid field. And then when Harry comes back, he's basically like, oh, that really sucks for them. They don't really have an afterlife. And Janeway's like, well, nobody's so sure. There's like some kind of weird neural energy in this asteroid field we were tracking as well, which seems to have the same resonance pattern as these aliens. So maybe they have some kind of afterlife in this area that we just don't totally understand just yet. She encourages Harry to take some extra time off to reflect on what he's been through. Harry's like, nah, I don't really need it. She's like, yeah, you do. You've been through one hell of an experience, and you're a young officer. Take it easy. Write a journal, and then come back.
Paint a picture if you have to.
Yeah, do something.
Process the experience.
Yeah. So, and that's essentially how we leave the episode with Harry being basically made to be contemplative by Captain Janeway. So That's it. That's essentially the episode. And again, if you want more, you can always go and watch that episode. It's available right now on Paramount Plus.
Correct.
First impressions of this episode.
Yeah, this one is a very... It's kind of a mixed bag. I do think there are elements that are good. I think the best stuff in this episode are actually the Janeway parts. There's a moment where Torres says, my fix for the warp core is down to 21%. I advise we leave Kim behind, basically. Like, we can't stay forever. And Janeway looks kind of chagrined and upset, but says, okay, fortunately, that's right when Kim comes back, so that all works out. But, she's willing to make hard choices. But the better scene is when she's comforting the woman, this alien woman, who's kind of freaking out about the fact that her understanding of what afterlife would be and showing up on this alien spaceship is not what she's expecting. And so Janeway says to her, like, whenever, as soon as I learn something, I will tell you. Like, she doesn't make false promises, but she does a very good job of offering the woman as much comfort as she can, basically saying, I'm not abandoning you to your, questions and your doubts and all that. But this episode does originate in the Gene Roddenberry, he didn't have much interest or, thought the future wouldn't have a religious, all religions would have kind of faded away, if you will. In the future. And
are you stating that, or are you asking that?
Well, I think I'm stating it, but tell me if I'm wrong. Is that an accurate kind of assessment?
I never took it that way. I always took that Starfleet was supposed to be more like an outgrowth of just a generalized acceptance of all religions. Like, basically saying that for the purposes of Starfleet, we are not saying any one religion is correct, and that we don't need to in order for you to work in our organization. So because we never see civilians a whole lot, we don't really know what the state of any particular religion is. But when it comes to the officers, they're all trained to be like, your religion is your religion. I'm not going to make any kind of ruling, statement, or whatever about it.
Well, I will say this. I mean, my understanding of of Gene Roddenberry is that, he didn't have a very high opinion of religious beliefs, and that Star Trek kind of is an example of that. But whenever, like Chakotay is allowed to have his, Native American belief system, we know that that's actually been falsified. But anyway, what I'm getting at is that this episode has Kim saying that, like, I don't even know, we don't even know what happens in our afterlife. And okay, fine, I'm not debating that. I'm just saying that he speaks in a definitive statement on behalf of all of Earth culture or all of the Federation culture. And okay, again, fine. It's just it's an informed decision in the sense of the show doesn't, it's presenting a certain worldview, a neutral worldview, you might argue. Again, fair enough. But when you have that culture up against a culture that is claiming certain beliefs about the afterlife, he doesn't go into, for example, a list of, on my world and where I grew up, there were some certain people who did believe certain things, or I believed certain things growing up. He doesn't relate a personal experience. He just says, we don't know. And on a certain level, that's actually fine. In fact, if I would critique Kim in this episode, it would be that he actually gets too involved. He decides the Prime Directive be damned, and
he does. You're absolutely right, but I give him a pass because it very quickly became that they were just going to poke and prod and test the crap out of him, and they were never going to give him any kind of freedom.
Well, I'm not doubting that. I'm just saying that when he's talking privately with the guy who's there to be killed,
he doesn't hold back.
Yeah, he's not holding back. He's not pulling a Prime Directive. I'm sorry, but I don't have interest for you, and I'm gonna just stay quiet. The other guy catches on that Kim is reacting to what he's saying. And I think he's right. I mean, Kim is reacting as we expect he should, in the sense of basically what it comes down to is this culture says to its old and its elderly, or its injured, you're a burden to society. You're a burden on your family. Your family has basically voted for you to go to the afterlife. This machine does two things for us. One, it kills you. It efficiently, takes you out, finishes you off. As opposed to, we don't know, like the woman that Voyager kind of rescues and brings back from the dead, it turns out she had a cancerous growth. So they removed the cancer and they're able to revive her. Is this culture able to solve cancer? Have they avoided solving the problem of cancer because they just found it easier to just knock off their sickly? We don't get those questions answered. But, what it comes down to is, if you're a burden, we knock you off. These, it turns out just like, Old Faithful at Yellowstone Park, every once in a while, these, these vacuoles appear and they suck the body away, and they just have, basically they made technology that uses the vacuoles a certain way. But what I'm getting at is that at no point in this episode is it ever made clear about who has proposed these beliefs about the afterlife, what kind of evidence do they have about these claims. Like, for example, if this is technology that is using the vacuoles, has anyone ever experienced any sort of scientific explanation or attempted? I want to be very clear. This is an episode, only has 40 minutes to tell a story, so of course there are questions we don't have time to answer in order to move the plot forward, and it's more interested in asking questions about, the afterlife in general than to specifically give answers about this specific culture.
Yeah.
I get that. My whole point, though, is that there's a lot of questions around this whole process. What's going on? Why are they doing this? And we don't get those answers, and in some ways, it would be very interesting to see what they could have come up with as answers to these questions. And if I were, on the writing team, I would have had certain contributions. For example, the ultimate thing that we get from Janeway at the end is that, yes, they do have some form of afterlife, but it's a it's still within the physical world. It's not a afterlife where you go to a different dimension or a different plane, though that's still possible because it's never clear where exactly Kim went. In fact, they insinuate that he actually did not go to the planet that the asteroids were circling around, because they scanned the planet and they can't find him. He's somewhere else entirely. We don't know where he went. But anyway, all I'm getting at is that this explanation does not have a clear origin. There's no clear explanation for why they're doing exactly what they're doing. It's all just taken on faith. And the reason I bring taking up on faith is because I was also thinking while watching this episode of a certain Rick and Morty episode. I don't know if you ever watched Rick and Morty, Perry. Did you ever watch Rick and Morty?
I did some, yes.
Okay. Well, there's one episode. I don't remember where it is. It's probably like season 4, but it's a short little bit in the episode. Rick and Morty are at a diner. Rick is the grandfather, the scientific genius, and this alien shows up, and he wants Rick to kill him. It turns out that the afterlife can only be reached in this alien culture if you're killed in battle by a worthy warrior. Well, Rick is like, okay, let me go use the bathroom first, because that's how he approaches all things. He's so casual. So Morty, the young, naive grandson, starts talking with the alien and says, "Oh, wow, it's great that you and your culture know that this is how things work. Like, you figured this out. Your faith system has evidence. You've proved it. You know what happens." And the alien starts going, "What do you mean? What do you mean questioning it? What do you mean proven?" And so he starts to question his whole reason for being there, all within like 60 seconds of showing up. And so he basically is convinced within like 5 minutes that, oh no, this whole thing is a ruse. It's not true. And then he, runs out of the diner and gets hit by a bus and dies. And as soon as he dies, these demons appear to drag him down to hell because he didn't die the right way. He didn't die in a battle to the death with an appropriate warrior. And as he's being dragged away to hell, he screams at Morty like, "You ruined my death. I had everything worked out. You caused me to doubt." Like, the whole point of this bit is that, if everything is just taken on faith, then obviously you're doing something wrong. And the bit, of course, is that it turns out to all have been true. He should have been believing it. And I bring all that up because as a Christian, as this is Easter, the Christian beliefs about the afterlife aren't as definitive, I would say, as like what we're seeing here of like an emanation. You get a new. Well, I mean, there are some definitive things.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't feel like this was necessarily definitive. I mean, it was, you move on to the next emanation, and it's kind of, I felt like a lot of what we're told here anyway, from their standpoint, does align with some of the things that we hear in Christianity. You're going to go on to this different type of existence, and you'll be reunited with family and friends who've passed on before you, and you will live in this kind of idealized state where whatever is wrong with you is no longer wrong with you.
True.
Now there could be more to it, but that's kind of like the basics of what we're given in this episode.
Well, I guess what I was more emphasizing, because you're right, that is what happens. There's no clear definitive why. Why are the things the way they are? This culture sets them as they are. We don't get to question. Like, we don't, as an audience, get a chance to question those things. The story doesn't have time for it. And so,
and this is one of those, and this is another reason why, like, for me, this episode is so problematic, because I feel like this is a story that could have very much been told without the religious element to it. Religion is always going to be a very tricky thing to handle, especially when you are creating a religion and then you're also using it in a sci-fi subtext, because obviously when you're creating a religion, you're going to draw on whatever religion that you have some kind of knowledge base about, experience with, or whatever. And to me it was very clear that they were drawing on aspects of Christianity here when they were putting this together.
Well,
we can say whatever you want to say about
that.
Well, I was going to say, we can say whatever we want to say about their level of research and dedication to what they were doing. Maybe they felt like they didn't necessarily have to, because they were, again, supposedly creating a different religion. But my point is, stuff like this becomes a problem because your audience is also going to look for those parallels, which
Right.
then is going to lead them to having more questions, which your story in a 42-minute time span is never going to answer. So
Right.
you do yourself a disservice because you now have distracted your audience from whatever other greater message that you were maybe trying to convey, because they're lost in trying to figure out the rest of these parallels.
Right.
Now, in Deep Space Nine, we see the creation of and the playing out of the universes in the universe religion of the Bajoran people and the prophets and everything else.
Right.
And that's one that, despite its imperfections, we got to sit with for 7 seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, from the pilot to the end, the Bajoran
Yes.
faith is almost center to what else is going on in that entire universe. And
Yeah.
while there are many parallels to a lot of different Earth-based religions in that one, there are also a lot of distinct differences and how things play out between Kira and Cisco, the prophets, Kai Wynn, all these characters, how they interplay in that religious dynamic. We get so much more of that, which
Right.
answers some more questions, sure, but that's not what we get here in this episode. It almost feels like this would have been better served if they had dropped the religious element entirely and just been like, you're sickly. You've become a burden to your family. We have developed this very easy process for ending your life and removing that burden.
Right.
Which I think would have been a much better story, because even now we've got people who sign up for death in those death pods or whatever in other countries.
Yeah.
You know,
Maids, medical assistance in dying is a very interesting thing in Canada right now.
yeah.
They
So
have been knocking off a significant portion of their population that way. I don't know if you're aware.
But I'm just saying, I mean, that would have made for a very interesting story that
Well,
Star Trek would have been telling in this, um, especially like, because the question that you raised, I thought was very interesting. What you said, the doctor is able to diagnose that woman, Patera, and saw that she had a cancerous growth and
right.
was able to treat it. And so it's like you said, are was the death truly necessary, or was this a way of them handling their medical inadequacies? Like, did they
Yeah.
investigate fully, or they just to say that this was more, for the sake of the family, economical to just kill you than to keep you alive and work through debilitating medical procedures and whatever else. So
Right.
a lot of other more interesting grounded questions could have been raised by this episode versus us having to get into this deeper philosophical, quagmire that they lead us through, and they don't really answer anything for us.
Yeah. So 2 things. One, when we first get introduced to the guy that Kim meets, the alien who's scheduled to die himself. When we first meet him, he's talking with his wife, and she says, "Thank you for your sacrifice." It first sounds like, well, as this episode opened up with Voyager supposedly discovering a new element. So I first thought there was something about, and they said it, there's something about the bodies have
When the
a new
bodies
element
start to
about it.
decompose, the element comes out of them.
Correct. So I thought the woman, his wife, that this alien guy was talking to was saying, like, "Thank you for dying," because, like, basically your body will be valuable to us in some sense, or that's what I was kind of getting from it. But by turning out in the end that it just turns out he's been a burden. But, like, all we can tell about his disease or whatever's wrong with him is he was in an accident and he's been he's got like a limp. He's got like a crutch. Like, it's a very interesting idea that maybe they just kind of bump people off a bit early. Like, they just don't commit a lot of resources to helping people recover from whatever it is they have a problem with. They've chosen to send you on to the next life.
And to me, like, as I'm an atheist, and for me, in watching this and hearing this, that's exactly what I thought, was that this was a religion used as an excuse to kill people. You're a burden to your family. You're a burden to society. This is kind of our polite way of getting rid of you. We are going to cloak it in ritual. We're
Right.
going to make it this super important thing, the sacrifice that you're doing for your family, and your family is going to get some kind of benefit from this. We don't know what that is, but it's obviously something that also benefits the family in some way for you being willing to go through with this. And then you're off, and your injury will go away. You'll be reunited with friends and family who've gone on before you, and you'll just have a completely different type of existence in the next emanation. So it's this comforting story that's told to make you feel okay to crawl inside that death egg. I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah. It's
So
definitely bizarre. I mean, Kim's face was covered even with the shroud that he had to put
yeah,
on. Like,
yeah,
it's a very curious process that they make them go
and
through, which
and the fact that he knows the alien that not Tom, that Harry meets, the fact that he knows that other people have not gone through with this, and again they live in the mountains. Again, it just says to me that there is something about this that is just. I mean, obviously, it's just not right, and it's not like for our sakes, for humans. For the most part, we believe in living your full life. Like your death is, whenever it happens, it's supposed to be by natural causes
right.
for all intents and purposes. Yes, we have accidents. Yes, we have tragedies. But for the most part, all things being equal, you live out your lifespan and then that's it.
Right.
The fact that they found a way, like, I don't think that humans would ever do that, would ever just be like, oh, you're a burden, so kill yourself. Like
Yeah.
if we found out that someone was telling that to people, um, you know, we'd come after them. There are laws already in place, about convincing someone to take their own life in that particular manner. Now I know we did talk briefly about Canada and their death pods, and people have to sign up for that, and there's a whole process for that, I'm sure. But even then, it's just like it's not something that should just be easy
Right.
to do. And the fact that there was an alternative, again, go to the mountains, just threw me as this being the only thing that he could have done to ease the burden on the family.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much here that could be examined, but because it's just a shorter episode, we only get these glimpses. And yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just, and
that's
like I said, I feel like the problems with this episode are really the fact that they tried so hard to work it into this religious framing, which wasn't necessary. Like if you take that aspect out of it, you could still almost tell the exact same story.
right.
All the cultural significance is still there about you being a burden, about being able to ease this or whatever. This could have been an interesting story about euthanasia or whatever, but they didn't. They didn't do that. Now, the only thing I could think of as a reason for why they didn't go that route and wanted to at least change up a little bit was there is that TNG episode. I believe it was called Half a Life. It's where when Luoxana comes on the Enterprise,
Oh,
and
that's
there's
the
that
one I was going to bring up. Yeah.
visiting alien scientist Timothy, who's in
Yes.
his 60s
Yes.
or approaching 60.
Yes.
And he is their lead scientist trying to save their planet or whatever. But it also just so happens to be his 60th birthday. And at 60, he's supposed to go down, have a party with his family, and then commit ritual suicide.
Right. Remind me how that works. Like it's just like drinks a potion, or
they don't say. They just say that he's supposed to commit ritual suicide. He just says, and the guy says it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's dignified. So yeah, he could ingest some poison or something that basically just puts him to sleep and then he dies. But they don't really they don't go into any more detail on the actual committing of the suicide.
Right.
And then, of course, he also begins to question and wants to back out of it because he's met Luoxana. They've fallen for each other. and he wants to explore that, but he can't because he's supposed to die. And again, society, even his daughter comes up to the Enterprise and is like, "Look, this is our time-honored cultural tradition,
Yeah,
and
it's
you're
how
just
we do
suddenly
things.
gonna,
Yeah,
yeah, you're suddenly gonna throw that away because of this chick." You
right.
know, I feel like that was at least a little bit better handling of the subject
Yes,
matter because there was
yes,
no, again, there wasn't a religious benefit or element to it.
right,
This was strictly the cultural, societal aspects of
right,
this and his expectations as a family member, a father, a leader in the culture as
right.
well. This is something he was supposed to do. So, and it had far reaching implications. Like he stopped being able to communicate with people when he was trying to help them out. And even so far as they took all of his work
Yeah,
and they were like, nope. And they like boxed it all up and no one could access his work. So they were like wholly erasing him from society because he was not doing what he
doing
was
it,
supposed to do.
and
I
he
mean,
does do it in the end, doesn't he?
ultimately he does. And Loxana goes with him to the planet and
Right,
she participates in the ceremony,
right.
in the party aspects of it or whatever.
Yeah,
But yeah, that
yeah.
was
I agree. That
much
episode did a
better.
better job of exploring it. Of same idea, because this episode was trying to address. Yeah, this episode again. This episode could have taken the spiritual element on if they had just addressed who is it that, like, where do you get this from, like who informed you about this, who told you that there is a next emanation, what is it about this process that are you, what do
Are
you
you
know
getting
about
that from?
it?
Yeah, where are you getting it from?
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that's probably the biggest part of it that is a problem. Because even if you want to use this as another comparison for Deep Space Nine, at least with the Bajorans,
right,
that question is answered in the form
yeah,
of the prophets, and
right,
we get to see how interactions, even with the prophets, happen. So while we may not totally understand the prophets, we can understand how the Bajorans came to view them as religious deities
right,
because of the way that they interact. We don't see any of that here,
right.
and then we have Chakotay making his various inferences and stuff, which yeah, until we get to the planet where Kim is having the interactions, it's Chakotay that leads them down this path of
Hmm.
religious, specialness or otherness. So
Well, he's the one who's presenting theories about why things are the way they are,
yeah,
saying that, because their hands are folded over, this is a ritualistic thing they're doing. They were like, something's going on here. It's not just random. Um, I mean, it turns out there is some
I
randomness in the end.
I would have, and one of the biggest things, and this is why I disagreed with Chakotay so much on his visual assessment about this being a religious thing, is those bodies were everywhere. They were literally everywhere. Some were like wedged in between rocks. Others were like half hanging off. Like there was a couple of raised rocky outcroppings or whatever. Some of them were like half leaning on them. You know,
Right.
um, and he was basing his experience. He was basing his assertions off of his past experiences. And I just wanted to be like, when have you ever walked into any culture's gravesite and found the bodies not put in a uniform position? I mean, the only time we've ever come close to seeing something like that is when there have been genocides which led to mass graves and the bodies are just dumped in.
Well,
In
actually,
this,
I was gonna say it's funny you bring that up because I was with my parents today, like I said earlier, and they gave me some documents about if they were ever hospitalized, when to take them off, medical devices, whatever. But I asked them just out of curiosity, hey, if you ever had, like, do you have any opinion on how you, like, would you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Do you care? We had a little discussion about it, and my parents are in their 60s, so they're not likely to die anytime soon, but I was just getting their opinion on the subject. So actually, it's, I guess that's the other thing about, and I've complained about this about like the Dune series and Star Wars and Star Trek even. the idea that an entire planet would have the same culture, that they're uniform in their culture, I think is actually. I mean, if I were to write a sci-fi series and you had a planet involved, I would love the idea of like going to a planet where there, like like Earth, there are hundreds of cultures and varying opinions on all kinds of subjects. And so,
Well, and that's also one of the great failings of sci-fi is they
sure,
always introduce these aliens as these monocultures,
right,
It's not until way, way later that we finally start to see them, differentiate a bit. We've talked about this in regards to like the Klingons, for example. They were all warriors until fairly recently when we started to see singers and chefs and scientists and ambassadors and so forth.
right,
This is yet another example, this episode two of that. It's just easier to explain that the entire society is participating in this. But again, to my point about Chakotay making his religious reference here, I've never seen any group that has any kind of afterlife belief just chuck bodies into a spot. They're usually arranged in a certain way, positioned in a certain way. These were literally, there were some that were just like leaned up against the wall like an old broom. And there was one when they panned across the room, he was or the body, I can't say male or female, was wedged in between some rocks. And then there was the one that was laying across the little platform there, half on, half off, not, there was nothing significant about their arrangement at all. It just looked like a scattering of bodies in here. So it's like, so what would make you think there was any kind of religious significance? Because it looks like they just stood at the top of the cliff face over here and just kind of chucked people, So, and that kind of brought me back to B'Elanna's point, which was, hey, Klingons are religious, but when the person dies, they just get rid of the body in the most efficient way possible. The body is nothing anymore. That's it. Get rid of it.
right.
So his statement didn't make any sense because, in my opinion, because the rest of the overwhelming evidence, to my way of looking, was this just a dump site. Like if there was some kind of religious significance, it was all in the prep. But once execution happens, they don't care. It's it. And then I feel like that makes more sense considering what we see. We watch as the aliens go through their final preparation. They got to wrap themselves up. They got to do all that. They're put inside the cenotaph. They do the ritual, the laying of hands for the family on the thing. But then the guy just pushes the button and that's it. You're done. They don't care.
Right.
So they don't even know where it goes. So Chakotay being all, oh, let's treat this as a sacred space. Why? There's no reason for it. The people themselves don't think of it as a sacred space. It's just,
the bodies just end up there, it turns out.
Yeah, the bodies just are there. We don't care.
Yeah. This episode, I mean, I don't want to drag it out. I found this episode, like I was saying at the beginning, Star Trek is great because it has a campiness to it. It only has so much budget, it only has so much time, so it has to really it has to swing for the fences a lot of times, but you only get one shot at the swing. There are no 3 strikes, you're out. There's no, you get my analogy. So this episode, I feel, was a bit of a, it caught the ball in some ways, but it was more of a grounder, to keep the analogy going, than a true knock out of the park or a true hit. So there's some elements that I like, but yeah, using the TNG episode as an example of a similar episode, but did it better. And then, of course, Deep Space Nine, taking the whole religious question as a theme for the whole show. This episode is trying to do something new, but didn't give itself the full time and space to really kind of examine all the elements to their full extent. So, but again, I never want to say that an episode is bad simply because it didn't have the time for it, because that's not what Star Trek is. This is not usually, I mean, they're movies, like I said, but these are not movie-long episodes. If you get a
That's
two-parter,
the only reason why I feel like they should not dive into this realm of storytelling. They should
right,
keep themselves to things that they have at least the opportunity to explain to a greater degree than what you can really do when you're dealing with anything religious or supernatural in any particular regard.
right,
Because I don't even want to say I get why they do it, because I honestly don't. It's just it's like someone wants to tell a particular kind of story and they don't know how to make it work, so then they throw in this stuff to give them an out at the end. It's, well, we don't really know what's going on, do we? So we'll just say that at the end. And it's like, but you originated the story, so you should know.
yeah,
Like, don't crap out on me now.
right,
Commit to it and finish it.
exactly,
And that's, I feel like that's the biggest writing cop out ever is we're going to do this so that we don't have to fully explain ourselves, and then we can just move on. We don't have to revisit this. We don't have to come back and clean it up, whatever. We just get to say this and then we're done. So yeah,
right,
I don't agree with that at all. Um, I did like overall the characterization of Kim here, young ensign. This is kind of his first foray into away missions, and he's got a lot to do to get over his fear, to investigate the situation by himself, to figure out how to get home, and to have that, trust that the vacuum will send him somewhere close to his ship and get him back home in time that they can save him. So I really like seeing that in him, and this young officer kind of rising to the occasion and doing things.
right.
Did he do everything right? No. Would this have been handled differently if it was a more senior officer, like say Janeway herself or Tuvok or whatever? Probably. There's a little bit more cultural awareness that goes with being in command. So I think Janeway's softer approach with the female alien in sickbay would have played out a little bit better long term had she been the one in the cenotaph,
Sure.
But hey, Harry's young. He's Ensign Kim. He's gonna make mistakes. That's the point.
I guess
You know?
I just I know we've been talking lately a lot about what would our version of a Starfleet Academy look like, and I just feel like the Prime Directive is such a fantastic idea. It's so unique to Star Trek that I feel like it's almost inexcusable at this point for any character to not take it seriously. So the fact that Kim does not seem to take it quite seriously. I mean, he doesn't not. He does take it seriously, but he breaks it. Again, he has that conversation with the guy, and I mean, he has to save himself, and that's how it was necessary for the conversation. So I get it. But anyway.
And this is why a Starfleet Academy show that goes more into the nuances of Starfleet's regulations, like the Prime Directive, would have been a great show. Because as we've seen from all of our captains, from Kirk to Janeway, there's all kinds of exceptions and fine tuning of these rules that comes from it comes from experience, and it comes from understanding, and all that starts with how that lesson is taught, which we've never seen. And beyond the first part of the Prime Directive of the rule about non-interference, we don't really know all of the tenets, statutes, codes that come with General Order Number 1, as it's also called. So having a show that actually began to break that down a little bit and to establish what this law is would have been great, because then you would have established what the rule is, but then you could have also used past captains and past incidences where they outright broke it or bent it a little as examples for the complexities of it and the nuances that come from understanding how this is implemented.
Yeah.
And they just were like, nah, we're not going to do that at all. We're going to make aliens that vomit glitter instead.
Yeah. By the way, I'm telling you once again, I would be very curious to hear your take on the Three Body Problem series. So, because
Okay.
they basically have a very interesting take on a Prime Directive style. Like again, the Fermi paradox of why don't we know about alien civilizations? I mean, my belief is that they don't exist, that we're alone in the universe in that sense. But if you believe that there are possibly alien civilizations, why don't we hear about them? The three body problem has a very unique take on the
Okay.
question.
I will go ahead and I'll commit to getting the books and checking it out.
Yeah. By the way, it takes till book 2 before you get the full answer to that question. So if you were like, I don't know if I got a full answer on by book 1, I mean, the whole series is an answer to the question, but book 2 is the one that finally addresses it like directly, and then book 3 takes that to its final conclusion.
Okay.
Very curious series of books. So, but yeah, I know we got plenty of other stuff to read.
Yeah,
So,
we're almost getting ourselves bogged down in books here.
yeah,
I will say that always my favorite go-to discussion of the Prime Directive is the Next
Pen
Gen
Pals.
Season 2 episode, Pen Pals. Yes,
I knew it. I knew you were gonna bring
Picard's
it up.
Picard's statement, it makes so much sense. And it's like the Prime Directive primarily is there to protect us from, ourselves, really, and this desire to, impart knowledge or to influence other people in any regard.
Oh yeah,
That's what the rule is for. It's not, we're not trying to um, regulate this for everyone else. It's
right.
we as Starfleet officers who have signed up and committed to this career, this path of our lives.
Yeah,
We need this as a guiding principle to
right.
stop us from doing things that could, you know, ruin cultures or really ruin us. So like I always love that whole breakdown. That's like my top greatest Trek scenes. And if we got a show that was a bunch of those, I would be so happy. But yeah,
Right.
it just it'll never happen because everybody, I guess, feels like that kind of stuff is boring. But go watch it again if you haven't seen it in a while. Go
Yeah.
watch the episode Pen Pals Season 2, Next Generation. It's a great episode, and I still maintain that Data manipulates the hell out of everyone in that room when it's over. So, yeah. Well, I think that's going to do it for us. We had also planned to do a little first officer comparisons, but we're going to have to save on that yet again. We're just going to do a specific episode dedicated to first officers. Maybe we'll
Sure.
save it for like after we have finished season 1
Here's
of Voyager,
I
so
was gonna
that
say, yeah. Make
gives
it
more
the
time to.
interquel sort of episode we
Yeah,
do
yeah.
sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll
yeah,
do that. That's our plan. If you're interested at all in our various takes on the various first officers, we will do that when season 1 is over.
right.
That'll give us a chance to really kind of sit with Chakotay a bit and see how we feel about him in comparison to Kira, Riker. Do we want to throw Spock in there? I guess you have to. If you're going to talk about first officers, you can't not talk about Spock. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not fair because I feel like Spock's going to win. But
Well, I'll say it now. Is it the unique thing about Spock is that in the original series he's also like the science officer, so
yeah,
like
he's a
he's
science
not
officer and first
strictly
officer.
just the XO.
Right.
I mean, I haven't
That's
watched the
true.
original series, so I can't talk to it
No,
directly.
that's correct. He is the science officer, but he is also the first officer.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, Riker is just in that executive officer position. He doesn't serve any other function beyond leadership roles. He's not doubling up as ops officer, although it's kind of understood that in the event anyone else on the bridge goes down, Riker can step into whatever position and fulfill it. So
Right.
your pilot's console explodes, Riker could sit down and do it, So
Okay.
yeah. But all right. we'll look forward to that in a few weeks once we get through the rest of season 1. We just now hit season 8, season 9, or not season 8, episode 8, episode 9, whatever one you want to go by there. We're just going to call it episode 8 because part 1 and 2 of the thing, that'll make it easier. So
yeah,
so we've got 18 episodes to go, and then we'll talk about it. Well, all right, guys, I think that's going to do it again for us on this particular episode of The Fire Caves. If you have any questions, comments, no concerns, because I don't really want to hear your concerns. But if you have anything else that you want to level at us, please feel free. You can either leave it as a comment on our YouTube channel. You can also send it to us on our Facebook as well. We'd love to hear from you. So don't be shy. Send that stuff our way. We will be continuing to read all these various books. We will get back to reviewing them once we actually finish some of the other ones. And I've actually been thinking about getting Project Hail Mary because I love the movie so much. I want to read the book finally. So there's yet another book I'm going to have to add to my stack of things to read. But all right, until next time, you all take care of yourselves.
All right. Thanks, guys.